All attendees are in listen-only mode.
So hello everybody, my name is Mark Sage. I'm the Executive Director of the AREA, the Augmented Reality for Enterprise Alliance, and welcome to our latest webinar brought to you by the AREA Safety Committee. And today we have a number of the AREA members talking about AR safety issues. This is one of a number of different webinars that the AREA has been running for a number of years now. You can find them on the Augmented Reality AREA website, thearea.org, and look for the webinar page, but also find it on the AREA's YouTube channel. A variety of different webinars, always delivering thought leadership kind of content, from industry-specific webinars to about some of the challenges of delivering enterprise AR, and through some of the other benefits as well. So please take a look at the webinar series. Okay, today we'll be talking about safety in AR, and I'm excited to be with a couple of the industry experts and AREA members. We'll ask these gentlemen, Greg and Glenn, to introduce themselves a little bit later on. But before I do that, I just want to give a quick introduction about the AREA and our work. So the AREA is the only global membership-funded non-profit alliance dedicated to helping the acceleration of enterprise AR. We only focus on enterprise AR space. We are currently 60 members strong. Our members are in 3 different kind of segments. We have companies that are deploying and have been deploying AR. We have a group of providers of AR technology, both hardware, software, platform providers, consultancy. And then we also have a third group, which we call non-commercial organizations, who are organizations like research institutes, government agencies, and universities, who are often at the leading edge thinking of AR. And being able to bring all of those members together to have conversations about the benefits and the challenges of implementing AR, learning from each other, is really important. And the AREA members continue to grow. So what does the AREA do? Well, this breaks down into 4 different pillars. We call it our strategic pillars. The first one is about delivering thought leadership content, which is, today is an example of that. We are helping business decision makers and people in the industry understand what it means and how to implement augmented reality within our organization. So we're focusing on what use cases, e.g. what problems can be solved using AR. We're providing case studies, so examples of those problems being solved in real life, being able to explain what technologies are needed, and most important, the ROI, the return on investment. And we deliver the thought leadership through multiple ways, including the portals, social media, and webinars as per today. Networking is really important, and we bring the AREA members together really to connect, to share experiences, to learn from each other and build those partnerships. And we do this in a variety of different ways, ranging from an AREA workshop that we run every year to being at and supporting the the augmented reality events that happen around the world, but also through a monthly set of committees that I'll explain in a moment. And there's plenty of opportunity to learn from and to discuss and to provide your insights to the different groups. The third area is the educate side. We want to make sure there's a continuing set of skilled workers coming into the industry. We're already finding some of our AREA members are struggling to find these skilled workers. So we're working with universities to help them define courses for the future, providing guest lectures, outplacements, setting them challenges, and anything we can do to help them skill up the next set of workers in the augmented reality ecosystem. And then finally, we are focusing on reducing the barriers to adoption. As an ecosystem, we are seeing lots and lots of pilots, proof of concepts, prototypes happening, but not as many full deployments. So we have a number of committees focusing on some of the business challenges when it comes to barriers to adoption. As you can see here, we have security and requirements, and what we'll be focusing on today is the safety and the work from the safety committee. We also have some other committees, including the marketing committee about promoting the thought leadership content. We also have the human factors looking at the UX and UI side, and then we have a very strong research capability where we ask all the area members what they would like to research. Every organization or every member can make a proposal. We have a pitching session where they can explain their proposal. Then every member can vote, and whatever proposal gets the most vote, the area then funds and delivers that research. And we'll be talking about one of the research projects later in the webinar today. Anyway, that's a kind of an overview of the area. The one thing I would say before we introduce our experts today is that if you have any questions, please use the question facility on the GoToMeeting and type in your questions. We will be taking questions at the end and not through the actual the webinar itself, but please feel free, and if we can't get through all the questions, Glenn and Greg have committed to answering them after the webinar. Okay, so let's get on to today's experts. Firstly, it's my honor to introduce Greg, Garrett from Boeing, and also Glenn Peake from Welsh Water. Greg, if we could start with you, perhaps you can talk a little bit about your role, who you are, and your work in augmented reality at Boeing. Greg, over to you.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, my name is Greg Garrett. I'm a senior lead ergonomist here, recently relocated to Charleston, South Carolina. I had been working on the defense side of things in St. Louis for a couple of years. The work that I do for supporting augmented reality for our enterprise is I'm the safety and ergonomics person here for supporting the entire enterprise for augmented reality. We have been working on our safety side for writing process guides and delivering communications to a lot of our EHS professionals, as well as looking at different use cases, things like wiring, fastener installations. We've even been exploring remote SMEs, as well as design reviews capabilities with the AR systems.
Thank you, Greg. And we'll look forward to hearing more about your work in the kind of safety space. Okay, if I could perhaps hand over to Glenn. Glenn, perhaps you can introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the work of Welsh Water.
Yes, no problem. Thank you, Mark. So so I'm Glenn Peake. So I am responsible for the augmented reality rollout here at Welsh Water and the different types of innovation projects that we currently have ongoing. So just a bit around Welsh Water themselves then. So we're the sewage and water undertakers for Wales and part of Herefordshire. So we have, as it says on the slide there, so 3.5 million customers and 1.4 million homes and businesses that we serve, all from over 800 million litres of water supplied daily from 98 of our treatment works through vast amounts of water mains. 838 sewage treatment works, and again our sewers are even further over 30,000 kilometres, as well as delivering water and treating wastewater. We also have a number of visitors to our visitors attraction centres that we have around Wales, and over 70,000 school children. The work that we're currently looking at is that we can revolutionise the way in which we are delivering operational information to our colleagues. So we are a very widespread team of somewhat 3,000 colleagues, very much paperwork based at the moment, but we are investing heavily into our assets. So we thought that we'd invest in how we are maintaining and keeping all our documentation available. And as it says there, so we're investing £1.3 million a day into our assets here at Welsh Water. So I mean, we had a challenge. We were presented with a challenge on how we can deliver complex information to our operational colleagues and to show some innovation in how we're currently creating, maintaining, and presenting documentation and data to our colleagues. So first off, we started with the lean approach and the RCM delivery that we currently have within the business, but then also data analytics. So how can we work on the data we currently have, make it better to make the right decisions at the right time, making sure that we have the right data to present back. And then from that, then we got a project team together. We decided on AR and what we are calling the Interactive Works Operating Manual. So we have works operating manuals for our assets anyway, which are very paper-based at the moment, but we thought that we have all this data available, let's make it more handheld, let's bring in augmented reality, and let's use the technology we currently have available on the market and deliver that. So the critical and safety and process information for the operators to carry out their activities is now present on the tablet. You can see there, every site needs an induction, so we've been able to bring in MPEG-4s and emergency schematics into these inductions to present the right information. Using VR, we've got 3D rendered models of the assets, so you don't actually need to be on the asset to see the asset, which was a great benefit for us from both design and training perspectives. NFC QR code collection submission, so presenting the data at point, at source. So using that type of connectivity, we're able to bring forward that information to where the operator needs it. So we're collecting that data right there in front of the equipment. Lean processes, pushing through the lean process we have available already currently on the business, but we're then able to, again, collect that data source, carry out them activities where we need to carry out them activities on the site. Then AR is the main driver we put into it. So we've overlaid plant and process activities, overlaid the process safety information onto this actual equipment on site. So we're able to see the flow of water, we're able to know the valve changes, the valve arrangements, what needs to be done in states of emergencies. And then our procedures and data recordings and our foams, we are very heavily form related as a business, so we have now automated that. The QR NFC tags are capturing that data for us, so we don't have to put the data in, it's being pulled from the equipment, and then using the GPS guidance available on the devices, we're able to navigate the operators around the site. So it means the quickest routes, safest routes to get to the different pieces of equipment on how we can actually carry out them activities when we get there.
Perfect. Thank you, Glenn, and thank you, Greg. So what we're going to do now, everybody on the webinar, I'm going to ask these guys some questions. They're basically in two kind of groups, really. One about their work in delivering AR and some of the challenges that they've seen and overcome in safety AR. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the work of the Area Safety Committee in terms of its deliverables and its content and meetings to see how that's also helped them as well. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a pretty high-level open question, and perhaps Greg, I can ask you to start with this. Can you talk a little bit about some of the safety issues that you've encountered when you've been delivering your AR projects?
Sure, Mark. Yeah, we have encountered several safety issues when we've been implementing the devices out onto our production floors. One specific has been trip hazards. As if anybody is aware, a lot of our in some fairly large manufacturing environments, a lot of times we have mechanics who are in cargo area sections that are not complete, and so they may be doing wiring installation, and there may be cords and hoses as well as open floorboards areas within the cargo space. So we have to be very careful when they are moving about the interior of the aircraft, just to make sure that they don't trip or fall. So there has been some concern because of the overlay that it might inhibit or their vision while they're trying to move around. Also, too, because of the additional weight that's added to the individual's neck or head when they're wearing the augmented reality device, we are having some ergonomic concerns around neck extension because they're doing some of this wiring work looking up overhead. So if they're in postures for extended periods doing this particular work, then we want to make sure that they're moving a little bit more frequently so that we can avoid some of those ergonomic concerns. Also, poor postures. Are we putting the worker in maybe a crouch, or are they on their hands and knees while they're trying to look at particular things? So we have to be very cognizant and aware of the particular job and what those entail when they're doing their particular work. So those are just a few of the areas that we're looking at and having to address through the implementation of those systems.
Okay, thank you, Greg, and perhaps we can talk about some of the work you're doing to overcome them as we answer some of the other questions. Glenn, over to you in the Welsh Water industry organisation.
Brilliant, thanks, Mark. Yeah, so similar to Greg's, really. So we have experienced a number of issues around the safety element. So this is something completely new for us as a business. So we have very industrial. Our water plants are very process based, if you like. So there's pipe work, there's very limited lighting in some of them, and there is moving machinery, automated machinery, and so on. So we had to take all this into consideration. And realistically, for me, we really needed to ensure that all the wearables and handheld devices could be used in such settings without hindering the safety and awareness of the users. So we didn't really want to overburden them with really heavy wearables, and we didn't want to limit their availabilities to perform the tasks, and we needed to take all that into consideration. And then also around the use of PPE, we need to ensure that the hardware was compatible with the PPE, such as a hard hat. So we needed to clip them in, or make sure that what we were doing and what we were presenting our operational colleagues with wasn't making their job harder or limiting their availabilities to do their jobs, but also making sure that they're safe at all times, because safety is paramount with us as a business. So yeah, we had to take all of that into consideration.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Before we pop on to the next question, do you just want to perhaps spend a minute or two on some of the kind of key ways you've overcome some of those challenges? Perhaps just pick one at this stage, one of the challenges, and talk about at least the conversations or the work you've been doing to overcome that before we, when we jump on to the next questions, we can go into a bit more detail. Greg, maybe we start with you.
Sure. So I mentioned trip hazards as one of those key safety issues, and the overlay. What we ended up doing was developing a software application so that when the HoloLens or the AR device recognized that the user had reached somewhat of an ambulatory walking speed, it would shut off the overlay. Of course, it didn't make them blind, it just removed the overlay. They could still see through the glasses. That way, they are more aware of, and we don't run the risk of some sort of occlusion from the overlay that they missed seeing that hole in the floorboards, or if there was a cord that they could have tripped over. So that was one key aspect that we incorporated into all of our devices for that purpose.
Thanks, Greg. And Glenn, can you just give a little insight into one of the ways you've overcome some of the safety challenges you've encountered?
Yes, so for me, I'd probably focus on more of the device wearables and connections to our PPE. So when we started this journey, we ensured that our operational colleagues were aware of what we were doing. So we didn't want to drop anything on them last minute, really. So that would have been the last thing that we wanted to do. So from the word go, we got them involved, starting with the development, and we got a bit of understanding of how they'd done their daily job, so we could see how by giving them wearable devices or handheld devices, whichever one we were presenting them with, would have that effect. Then we could come back to the drawing board and make sure that we could eliminate them, and then also giving them trials with them. So giving them the devices just to use in the control room first off, rather than taking them out into the industrial elements of the site, just so they were aware of it. We all know that these devices can feel different, if you like, when we wear them, and they can change the ways we look at things. We just wanted to make sure that they were used to them before they actually went out onto the industrial elements and started to actually perform tasks. So I mean, for me, it was more of the project management and the development of it, and getting them involved from the word go, so then they would expect in what was coming. So that was that with the device wear, and then also with the limited lighting, for example, we the devices can limit that for us with the use of torches and use of different types of flashlights and so on that's now on some of these devices. The backlights are really good. You've got the handheld tablets that will enable us to limit them, so we have that availability of the lighting to present the information in the best way.
That's great. Thank you, Glenn. And I would echo, not just for the safety side, but in our work within the area, the getting the workers involved or the users of AR at the earliest possible stage through kind of all the requirements and testing is crucial, you know, and whilst it's kind of obvious, I think it's an important step that we should all do for any AR project, safety issues or not. So I think that's a very good piece of advice. Okay, I just wanted to move a little bit into the work that we've been doing in the Area Safety Committee. So just quickly to explain that to our listeners, you know, I mentioned before we have the committees. We meet for around about a month every, an hour every month. And anybody who is an area member can join those kind of calls. And it's really about focusing on how we can reduce risks from a safety perspective. Obviously, we have different committees focusing on different kind of areas and stuff like that. So perhaps, Greg, I'll start with you again. If you could talk a little bit, and what I should say to the audience is Greg is actually the co-chair of the safety committee and does an amazing job within that. But can you talk a little bit about how the Area Safety Committee has helped you and Boeing through its work?
Sure. So one of the key aspects that I've discovered working with the safety committee is that it allows us to have a great introduction to other companies who may be experiencing similar issues with the deployment of AR devices, like as we are. And you know, I don't want to think that Boeing has all the answers to all the issues that are out there going on. So it really gives us that opportunity to find out what other companies are doing and how they may be addressing those things. So it really has helped us, Boeing, shape the way that we're deploying these systems in a safe manner. Just a prime example of that collaborative effort is NIST recently joined the area, and one of the gentlemen on the in NIST. So he and I have been working together to try to create a working group that will help lead the development of standard implementations from a safety perspective for AR devices that can be used across industry. So that, I think, is going to be a really key element, and hopefully we can get that together and launched off. So if anybody's listening out there and you're interested in working with us on developing those standards, please drop us a line. We'd be more than happy to bring you in for that very reason. We've also pulled in some UX designers, which we'll probably talk a little bit about later, but also to help with that safe application and user interface with the AR devices. So it's been quite the experience over the last year or so.
Great, thank you, Greg. And Glenn, from Welsh Water's perspective?
Yeah, so again, it's probably similar to what Greg has mentioned. But for me and for us as a business, I mean, we started this fresh. I mean, we were a number of one or two members of the team had a little bit of an understanding around augmented reality, but again, that was very limited, and we were challenged to show how we can deliver this and how we can develop and drive change forward, basically. So by joining the area, we were then able to share that best practice and get contacts with other industries that are, again, similar to what we see, leading the way in the development and delivery of AR. It was able to make us start them conversations with both developers and subject matter experts to make sure we're doing the correct steps to deliver the projects that we were looking at. And it also opened up our mind to, well, what else was possible. We were very at first we were VR. Well, could we look at this? Could we look at that? But then when we come into that monthly meeting, you have them conversations. You go, well, yeah, perhaps that is the right way to do it, or we can share that and say, well, no, that's not the right way to do it. Perhaps you could look at doing it this way. And it's that for us. It's been able to work with the other areas or other utility sectors or other different types of businesses that have done it that we could potentially look to deliver into what we are doing. So yeah, it's most definitely sharing that best practice and sharing ideas.
Perfect. Thank you, Glenn. Okay, let's just want to talk a little bit about some of the work that we've done in this kind of safety space within the area and its members, and then ask the kind of guys how they've used this in the real life situation. So one of the things the safety committee wanted to do early on, and we've had this is an infographic, is to kind of explain the risks of wearables within the industry, but also talk about some of the benefits. So after quite a bit of work and discussion within the committee, we've kind of created this infographic. This is available for everybody, and anybody on the call, we'll send this to them. And having those conversations, being able to categorize different issues or potential issues is a useful kind of exercise. So I was going to ask the guys, let's go to the question, perhaps you can talk a little bit about, how we kind of created this and how you're using this kind of infographic at the moment. Greg, you've been one of the kind of drivers of this. Can you talk a little bit from your perspective?
Yeah, so we pulled in several people out of the safety committee who had a lot of experience dealing with AR or something very similar. And we really tried to pool what that information is. How is it impacting the individual? And if you're looking at the infographic, you can see in the center there where we have the individual and where it says AR and it's kind of in red. We realize that there's some internal factors that are impacting the user. Then if you go out to the next band, that kind of yellow color, we realize that there's some external factors through the use of the device. And then outside on the edge, you can see some of that green. But we really kind of we pulled in a lot of information, and we really needed to distill it down to something very quick, very easy, very an easy way to get that information across in a very short manner. So this is very, very broad. It's very general because we just don't have the space to really be more specific about it. But that's how we kind of got it down into those bite-sized pieces. Some of our future steps, though, is to actually make this somewhat interactive on the web page, the AREA web page. And so, for instance, if you would hover over the yellow environmental, you would get a pop-up box that would have additional, more in-depth information that kind of really talks about what that is. But it's a great guide that we've been using and implementing here at Boeing to our EHS professionals specifically, who've been much more the recipient of this, because we have a lot of individuals in our EHS or our safety group who are not really that familiar with these devices and how they interact, how the person interacts with them, how they interact with the environments. And so this gives them kind of a brief overview, and they can use it to go out and assess potential areas where we're looking at running these pilots or running these programs. So it helps them assess and look for some of these areas and then find ways to work on addressing those so that we are implementing them in a safe and effective manner. So that's probably been the biggest benefit for us using this overall.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Glenn, a few comments before I can add a few more at the end.
Yeah, of course. Yes. So for us here, then, Mark, we can what we've tended to do is have the conversations around this. So there's a number of different people you have to sell the benefits to. So, and health and safety will always be paramount to say, is this going to affect health and safety, along with the bottom line figures and so on. So we can have them conversations, and we see it as more of like a 3-pillar approach. So we've got these types of internal, external, and then the other types of input that we need to put in to make sure that it is a success and we can get for the benefits. But we have them conversations around it to say, well, if we have the sensory, for example, then we go into the environment, we can control what can we control and what can't we control, and we tend to do it that way. And we also use it when we come into looking at what type of equipment we are going to purchase or pilot as well around our assets. So our assets are very industrial, and we have different types of processes on them. Some equipment can't go into certain areas and so on, so we can use this to say, well, is this device correct for what we're looking to do?
Cool. Thank you very much for that. My apologies for that phone ringing in the background. Okay. So the next thing we've created, of course, the one thing I want to kind of just mention or make people aware that, there are lots of different safety issues, and to go into real deep specifics in this call is kind of slightly difficult. So we thought it would be useful to talk about some of the kind of ways that we're trying to identify and overcome some of the safety issues. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the AREA research project, the third one that we ran on what we called safety and human factors. So if you remember at the start of the webinar, I talked about the AREA research capability. Any of the AREA members can make a research proposal. We have a pitching session, everyone votes, and whoever gets the most votes. So you can see how important safety and the kind of human factors elements are by this being the third kind of project that we run. To give you a bit of background about the project itself, we took a project lifecycle approach. So just a normal project lifecycle, but this is obviously focusing on AR deployments and developments, and kind of almost by interviewing lots and lots of companies that have deployed or are deploying AR, try and find out some of the kind of safety, human factors and requirements that they've been thinking about, really to create a reusable framework that's focused in 2 areas, on the kind of hardware side and on the software side, and create a list of kind of questions around safety issues and UX issues that you can ask these early parts in the development cycle. So rather than leaving it to the end and going, oh my goodness, we forgot this, or we didn't think about this, a kind of tool that we can front load, use at the very early stages, and ask a bunch of questions. So I can give you a few examples here. We've got, are you in an explosive gas area, high temperature, low temperature, is it bright, is it dark, and some of the safety issues that both Glenn and Greg have spoken about. And similarly on some of the software side, and I see some of the questions coming in, which I promise we'll pick up at the end, talking about some of these kind of issues as well. So this tool is for members only, AREA members only, but it's been a very kind of a useful tool. Just wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you've been using these tools within your companies, and has it been able to kind of, I won't say overcome, but help you realize potential safety issues before they actually arrive. Maybe Glenn, I can start with you this time.
Yes, no, yeah, of course, Mark. So yeah, for us, again, being the assessment tool enables us to open the doors on the benefits prior to starting the rollout or the pilots. We were able to ask them safety questions that inevitably the management teams or the individuals on site will ask. So we're able to go there armed because we've already done the pre-work for them, if that makes sense as well. So it just gives us that availability to drive that development forward more quickly, because then we'll have the buy-in from the word go. And again, as we mentioned previously, it's always good to get them operational staff in early and get their buy-in and get them involved with this type of assessment tools as well. So if they are making the decisions and we ask them questions, then we capture that, and then we can say, well, yes, look, this is a benefit that we could do as a business. And the project frameworks, and again from the support that we have from the areas and the associated committees, we're able to again bring that knowledge in, so we can bring that into the whole process and go there. Yeah, for me, is go there armed with the answers that they are inevitably going to ask us, and get that buy-in.
Great, thank you, Glenn. Greg.
Yeah, so we've actually been using this as an extension of the infographic that we talked about before this. So the infographic, gives you a quick kind of dirty look at what things you might want to be aware of, but the assessment for what we're using as an assessment form then provides more detailed information. Not only does it provide, here's the things that you need to be aware of, but if you check the yes in that box, then what kind of things can we do about mitigating those particular safety issues? And so it provides that, as well as where the EHS person can look for guidance, further to help reduce that potential safety issue. But it's also good because it works for not only the safety people, but also for developers or software developers in this particular case. And I mentioned earlier some of our UX individuals. They've been tasked with developing somewhat of a standards for the UX UI interface with our Boeing population. So that's going to help feed that information to them that they can use as somewhat of a guideline to help create that standardized process on how our applications are being written and how they're interacting with our workforce. So those are very key elements that they're having to look at. But again, as I said, using this form, we actually created this as a form, and it's readily available to our population, either through safety or either through the pilot developer. So they can go and determine ahead of time what things that they have to meet from a requirement perspective before they actually go out and design an application. So they can use those to help guide them in that regard. So it's been very useful in that aspect.
Perfect. Thank you, Greg. Okay, everybody, I've got one more question I'm going to ask these gentlemen. I've noticed there's some great questions coming in as well, so please take the opportunity to ask any more questions, and after this last one, we'll go on to some answering some of your questions. Okay, guys. So thinking a little bit about the future, what we've been talking about in the safety committee is a kind of a template or what we've called a AR Safety Playbook that will allow safety managers or other people within the organization to collect the information and allow enterprises to use that to communicate what's going on and ask some of those safety questions. We're in the process of creating this kind of template, this playbook. Can you talk a little bit? I know, Greg, you've been one of the leaders thinking about this. Can you talk a little bit about what you see this turning into and how you're potentially using it within Boeing as well?
Yeah, so we actually did create here kind of a best practice safety playbook here at Boeing, and so I thought that would be kind of a natural thing to create from a general. Basically, it's a how-to guide for other industries to see what we learned, lessons learned, and in deploying these devices out into our manufacturing environment. So it gives you a way to understand what kind of internal structure that's required or maybe needed in the companies or in that industry's work environment in order to support the deployment of these devices as long as they're being done in a safe and ergonomic friendly manner. It provides additional information that may be required to from an internal processes type of thing. So for instance, if you have guidance documents that need to be deployed, it kind of gives you an idea of what that would be and what kind of information it would entail. Of course, it's going to be a little different information based on what that company is like, but it kind of gives you that overall general, here's kind of how we did it, or how we've looked at doing it, and how other companies have done it, and kind of put it all together in this kind of general overview, kind of a paint by numbers, so to speak, and how you would want to go out and deploy these safety or these AR solutions safely. So that's kind of the overall general thought about what I'm thinking about, and it addresses other things too, like storage, how you maintain cleanliness, what kind of security that you need to be thinking about. So it's a very broad how-to manual, I guess.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Glenn, in terms of Welsh Water and kind of using that, can you see how you would use it in the future?
Yeah, absolutely, Mark, and similar to what was just mentioned, really. So, for us having the guides and the lessons learned, we're able to then, the way I see it is to join them up with our current health and safety procedures. So we have vast amount of assets, as I mentioned, and having them health and safety procedures, how we maintain, how we govern, how we roll out, and how we continually monitor the use of AR within our business, and making sure the health and safety of our operatives are not in question at any point in time. I think we'd be able to use such a playbook that would give us that consistent approach, regardless of what asset we're going on to. So we have thousands of assets. Every asset is different, but the approach should be the same. And by having such a playbook, then we're able to help our health and safety managers, help our health and safety teams to deliver that.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. So, we certainly have some time for some questions. I think hopefully that gives you an idea of some of the challenges that these individual companies have been finding in delivering AR solutions. Some of the work we're trying to do collectively to overcome them. Whilst each individual company could have particular safety challenges, actually a lot of them are shared. So being able to help develop that best practice is very important. I'm going to try and take some of these questions that people have put in. I've got one for Greg about which devices Boeing have been using in their AR solutions. Can you talk a little bit to that?
I'm sorry, Mark, could you repeat that question?
Which devices have you been using? I assume that's across wearables and tablets.
From an augmented reality standpoint, it's primarily been the Microsoft HoloLens. We've been looking at other types of devices, and we may at some point have additionally, but currently that's the one that we've been pursuing most. We have been doing some work with Google Glass, but that's not an AR, although it is a close cousin. But it's been primarily the HoloLens.
Okay, perfect. Jonathan, I hope that answers that question. We have a couple of questions I think are pretty similar, both from Ryan and from Scott, about kind of acclimatization and adjustment period from putting your device on and taking it off. Perhaps if I read one of the questions. This is again from Ryan. It seems there's an acclimatization period upon putting smart glasses on, especially monocle, and again after taking them off. As the safety off, for example, taking off smart glasses at the end of the day and driving home while still acclimatizing, or I think that's how you pronounce it, to binocular vision, be a concern from Boeing or Welsh Water. And similarly from Scott, I had a kind of a similar question around that. Any thoughts and comments on that?
Yeah, that's actually an issue that we've been exploring. We've been doing some internal research, survey collection, medical screenings on some of our employees who are actually using these devices. Currently, we don't have individuals who are using them for much of an extended period of time. But that is a concern from a safety side of things as we move forward, and we see more deployment and longer uses out of that. So we'll continue to monitor that kind of issue as we move forward. So some of the research that I've seen, so two things actually, I should say, start over again. So one of them is that we make sure that the individual, when they begin using the HoloLens, for example, there is an internal calibration system which is designed to make sure that the image that they're receiving is properly aligned with their pupillary distance, their interpupillary distance. And so we have that as a requirement that the user has to calibrate the system before they begin use. So that's number one. And I just forgot what number two was, but I may remember it later.
Okay.
Anyway, so I'll let Glenn answer that if he has any comments to that.
I think I 100% agree with you, Greg. I think we don't use it for prolonged periods of time at the moment, but I'm fully aware that different people will be affected differently by wearing these devices. And like I've said previously, this is 100% new to us as a business. We've gone from paperwork to having people wearing headsets, and it's been a big cultural change. But we are exploring the effects on what it would have, and we are telling our operational colleagues that if you are feeling uncomfortable, just take it off. Let's not push it to the point where they would be feeling ill, or again, with health and safety in mind, we don't want to put them into any issues that may arise down the line. So yeah, we are exploring what the effect will have and whether or not this is, again, we are just exploring this. We are piloting it. We have 3 or 4 of our assets that are currently being used, but we just want to make sure that we are doing the right thing for our colleagues to make sure that the job is easier for them, and getting their feedback is critical on what they do. And but yeah, we wouldn't, it's just for general tasks. So at the moment we wouldn't be wearing them for any prolonged period of time. And some of the equipment that we currently have and the battery life on some of the equipment, you get the odd device here and there that is a shift life battery, but I don't think more than 4 hours at the moment, 4 or 5 hours at the moment. So I mean, we still have that limitation there, which could be a good thing or a bad thing at the moment. But yeah, we are exploring it.
I remember what it was, Mark. So based on research that I have seen out there, and it's somewhat anecdotal, so it's not really refined research, is that people can acclimatize to the use of the device. So maybe there is a small percentage of the population, I'd probably say somewhere between 1% to 2%, who may always experience some type of issue, motion sickness, or other vision issues from the use of the device. But the literature is, what little is out there, is saying that over time they can become less sensitive to those types of issues, although some people will never be able to. So there are some genetic differences or biological issues that we have to make sure we're being aware of. Number 2 or number 3 at this point is that we also have implemented a somewhat of a process, so that if we have an individual who is new to using the AR and they're going to be using it in a work environment, we do have a spotter with them during that initial training and time period, so that if they notice that the individual is starting to have some difficulty or experiencing some problems, either with dizziness or other types of motion-related sickness, then they have the authority to stop that immediately. And so we do have that in place from a safety perspective, as well as time limits until they can acclimatize to the use of the device.
Yeah, thank you. Greg, I also remember you discussing or talking about some research has found a difference between male and female and the use of wearables. Do you remember that?
Actually, that's interesting you bring that up. So there is some research that's been done. I do not know if it's been published yet. It was done by a group in Florida, that there has been suggested that females are more susceptible to motion type issues when using the AR or VR type devices. Well, as it turns out, that I mentioned interpupillary distance earlier, it's different for men and women. The problem that has been discovered is that because the systems are primarily designed for male users, the females are having a much more difficult time calibrating the system for their interpupillary distance. And so that was what was actually leading it to be more gender biased, when in actuality it was more of the device design, hardware, rather than issues with gender.
Yeah, thank you. I guess another piece of kind of research, that we are supporting through the area, it's one of our members is EPRI, Electric Power and Research Institute, and they're doing a piece of research with Marquette University, who are also a member, on a kind of 2-year field study with field workers and the use of AR. As we well know, there's not a huge amount of kind of long-term study work, so they're working closely with one of the utilities about using AR in the field and some of the implications of that. So whilst it won't be available quite yet, I think we'll all be very interested in that sort of research and what it shows and highlights. Cool. Okay, we're coming towards the end. Jeremy, thank you very much for your comments. We'll definitely we'll touch base and perhaps get on a call with you and Greg and the safety committee. I think, Jonathan, hopefully we've answered your question about cyber sickness across a kind of a whole number of different points and stuff like that. I think as far as I can see on these, yep, okay, thanks, Jonathan. Hopefully you found that useful. There's a whole bunch of other organizations who are involved in the kind of safety committee. It's really fascinating from my perspective, seeing kind of the similar conversations going across industries like, we have utilities and aeronautical here, but oil and gas and manufacturing and stuff like that. So, it's a fascinating subject. I want to thank Greg and Glenn for being some of the experts and really helping us work out what needs to be done in the future. I'd like to thank you for attending and also, continue your great work in the augmented reality space. And this will be, I'll send you the recording of this. If you've got any questions or want to find out a bit more about the area, please feel free to email me at mark@thearea.org. I wish you all a great day and thank you very much for all your support. And I'm sure I'll speak to some of you soon. Thanks ever so much, everybody.